2, 1.
Did you start it? Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. My name is Stacy, and today I will be doing a presentation on the topic of leadership. I will be discussing what leadership is, the qualifications for good leadership, and the negative effects of toxic leadership. Now, you may have questions as I go through these screens, and if you do, that's awesome, but just hold your questions until the end, and I will let you guys ask your questions towards the end of the presentation. So, what is leadership? Leadership, as defined by the communications professor Julia Wood, is the process of establishing and maintaining a good working climate, organizing group processes, and ensuring that discussion is substantive. Whether a group has one or multiple leaders, the primary responsibilities of leaders are to organize discussion, ensure sound research, and to promote norms for mindful listening, clear verbal and nonverbal communication, and to create a productive climate to build group morale and to discourage egocentric or self-centered communication that detracts from group efforts. Now, what does all that mean? It's a lot of words. The first thing that it talks about in that definition is having a good working climate. So workplace bullying is one of the things that hinder a good working climate. Workplace bullying is recurring hostile behaviors in the work environment. I have a video for you guys. I don't know if it will work. They have a couple of technical difficulties with that, but I'm going to try to show it anyway, and we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, I'll just move on, so just bear with me, please. Now, the video I'm about to show is just like a short, but it's giving a good example of what workplace bullying looks like, if it works.
She seemed to get real satisfaction from humiliating her coworkers. Gina, I have a question about my vacation pay. Greek policy. Yes, but I'm not going to figure out for you what you can figure out for yourself. I don't understand why I only got. I am not going to explain it again. This conversation's over.
So I'm not going to show the whole video, but as you can see, she's being very hostile, and she's definitely making her feel intimidated and not safe being comfortable talking to her. So that's something that you want to avoid as a good leader, having that type of way of dealing with people. Another component of a good working climate is climate communication, where there is open and an engaged atmosphere for discussion. So that just means that you feel safe to freely speak and freely communicate and discuss things at the designated time. That's a really important part of having a good working climate. Another component of good leadership is having organized group processes. All members should have an opportunity to voice ideas and respond to ideas that others put forward. But this only happens if there is a structured way of doing it and if fairness is in mind. There also must be respectful communication throughout the entire process of a discussion. All right, ensuring that discussion is substantive. That means that you're staying on topic, you're avoiding distractions, and that you're respecting communication differences. So I have a chart here that just states what the different types of communications personalities there are. So you have the dominant personality, where they're more decisive and they're more competitive. And then you have the influencer, who's more persuasive and more optimistic. But then you have the conscientious one, who's more reserved, laid back, but they're still participating. They're just not as involved as the others. And then you have the steady one. They're relaxed but cooperative. So these are things to keep in mind when you're passionate about your opinions. Everyone has different communication styles, and if you want to be fair, it's best to just be aware of it and acknowledge that while you're having discussions with people. All right, organizing discussion. That's a really important part of good leadership as well. A lot of times when you're in leadership, let's say there's a group, a lot of people may not know each other in the group. So it's really important to make sure people feel comfortable. And one of the ways to do that is to do introductions or an icebreaker. I love icebreakers, and that's usually a fun way to get people feeling more comfortable. Also, it's important to explain what the ground rules are. just as simple as saying, hold your questions until the end. That lets people know, a simple way to let people know the way that you want the discussion to go. Also explaining the topic is really important so people know what the discussion is going to be about. And having an agenda helps you stay focused, stay on task, so you don't deviate from the timeline you might have, or just from the different topics that are within that agenda. And also you want to facilitate open conversation. So just like we talked about, having a good working climate, facilitating open conversation is all a part of that as well. And encouraging participation. So not only the leader, but also the participants. Encouraging maybe the shy ones to participate. There's a variety of ways to do that, which I'll talk about later on in the presentation. But one of the other important parts of group leadership is group management. Whoever is leading needs to know how to manage the group. You need to know how to resolve conflicts, how to keep people from over-talking, and as stated before, helping shy participants give their opinions, because everyone has things to say. Some people are just more afraid than others to talk about it or to communicate it. All right, so ensuring sound research and reasoning. This happens when you're in a group and let's say you're working on a project together. You want to make sure that the information that you give or that you have is valid. So you have to check the source, make sure that the source is good. Consider the way the research was done or the research design, because even though it might be a good source, if the research design is not good for that particular experiment or research, then it's really not so valid. Another thing to consider is the components of the study. How many people were used? Was it enough variety in the mix? Other things like that. And promoting norms for mindful listening and clear verbal and nonverbal communication. So raise your hand if you want to say something. Don't speak while others are talking. Things like this. These are considered norms for the communication that you have in discussions. All right. We also want to make sure that you show build group morale. This says show that you care and that employees matter. Something as simple as that can really help the morale of a group be built up. Everyone wants to feel valued. They want, recognition, even if it's something simple as great job today, because it helps you feel like what you do matters. And everyone wants to feel like what they're doing matters. So one of the ways to build group morale is to be transparent. Also to communicate often, even if it's good morning or how are you today. Employee recognition, as I mentioned before, and getting employee feedback. Saying something like, well, how was the project? How do you think that project went last time? Or, the last thing that we did, do you have any suggestions to make it better? That really makes people feel valued. Also, offering employee growth. Maybe there's a class or a workshop that will help them grow in their field that you can offer, something like that. Also, team building activities, incentives, and making sure there's diversity in the mix as well helps. I also have here office plants. That's a way to build group morale. And a decompression room, which is innovative, but it would be great to have that if a team can have a decompression room. It's just where they relax and calm. It's a little bit better than a break room. So that would be something that would be great to employ as well. All right, so lastly, discouraging egocentric communication that detracts from group efforts. So this basically means that there's somebody in the group and they are just all about themselves. They don't care what anybody has to say. They just want to voice their opinions and they want everybody to agree. Now, obviously that's not going to foster a good environment, and it's probably going to be harder for people to talk. So you have to be able to manage that. And I'm just going to quickly tell you what the book definition for egocentric communication is. It's dysfunctional communication that blocks productive discussion because it is self-centered instead of group-centered. An example would be, like, say you're raising your hand and then somebody just blurts out and they just take over the floor and you just have your hand raised, like, well, I have my hand raised just like the rule said, but obviously it's not working. So you have to keep that in mind too, when it comes to group leadership. Another way to have egocentric communication is when ideas are not acknowledged or given credence. Like, let's say you give a great idea or you just, give an opinion about something and no one says anything about it. It's just like, well, just move on to the next thing. You know, like, I don't like when that happens. It happens to me a lot. But so that's something that we need to avoid if you want to have good leadership and foster a good environment for the others. Active listening is not employed. That means people are inattentive and disengaged. So these are all things that don't help with the working climate. They don't help foster a good environment for people to speak and to feel good about communicating. So these are things that we want to avoid. All right, so my thesis is that good leadership, as characterized by things stated above, or before rather, leads to a safe, communicative, and productive work environment that yields profitable team results. So, good leadership leads to a safe work environment. I'm just going to read this quote for you. It says that a healthy workplace is one where employees, in addition to feeling secure and enjoying a safe physical work environment, feel recognized for the work they do, enjoy a positive social environment that encourages respect, enjoys an appropriate balance between work and life responsibilities, and they have the ability to influence their work and become involved in the decision-making process. And they're given opportunities for personal, intellectual, and professional growth. So a safe work environment, it's not just about having a physical work environment that's safe, but also a physiological work environment. So that means you feel safe emotionally, that you feel like you can speak to your boss, that you feel like you can speak to your coworkers, and there's this sense of belonging that comes with that. Okay, another point that I wanted to bring out was that good leadership leads to a communicative work environment. So a communicative work environment avoids confusion, provides purpose, builds a positive group culture, and creates accountability. These are all things that lead to a communicative work environment and that we want to make sure help foster what is done in the leadership process. Lastly, we have good leadership leads to a productive work environment. That means that your groups are on task, deadlines are being met, meetings that expectations are being met and even being exceeded, and being pushed to greatest potential. I have one more clip that I wanted to show you from a video. Yeah, there's someone on his back.
Oh.
He's doing the death crawl, blindfolded.
Keep driving. Very best. You're very best. You're very best. Keep moving, Brock. That's it. That's it. That's it. Keep going. Don't quit on me. Keep going. Keep driving. Keep your knees off the ground. That's it. You're very best. Don't quit on me. You're very best. Keep driving.
So I'm gonna fast forward towards the end, but I wanted you guys to hear how he was talking to him.
Knees off the ground. Keep driving. Don't quit till you got nothing left.
Okay.
Do not quit on me.
He's still going.
I know it hurts. You keep going. You keep going. It's all hard from here. 30 more steps. You keep going, Brock. Come on. Keep going. And let it burn. It's all hard. You keep going, Brock. Come on.
I'm gonna pull it a little bit more forward.
You're welcome to your best. You're back. Five more. Five more. Come on, Brock. Come on. Don't quit. Don't quit. Come on, Brock. Two more. One more. Good, Brock. You're in the end zone. Brock, you are the most influential player on this team. If you walk around defeated, so will they. Don't tell me you can't give me more than what I've been seeing. You just carried a 140-pound man across this whole field in your arms. Brock, I need you. God's gifted you with the ability of leadership. Don't waste it. Coach, can I count on you? Yes.
All right, so one of the things that I mentioned earlier in the presentation is that it pushes you to your greatest potential. It brings out the best in you, and that's what good leadership should do. It should push you beyond what you think you can do and take you like to greater heights and deeper depths. So, last but not least, the effects of toxic leadership. I'm just going to read what these quotes are. One says, their destructive behavior and dysfunctional personal characteristics generate enduring poisonous effects on those they lead. Selfish outcomes in their decision making. They leave subordinates worse off than when they began. The long-term impact of toxic leadership on the company's mission and reputation is often underestimated. So as you can see, there's a litany of effects from toxic leadership. So that's something that you want to avoid at all costs, and try to maintain good leadership, because that's what's going to give you good results. So today we discussed the specific qualities of leadership, which include group management, the use of valid information, and fostering a healthy working climate for all team members. We also discussed that good leadership will provide a physically and physiologically safe environment, which produces the best work from a team. And lastly, we discussed toxic leadership has negative lasting effects on a team. Any questions? Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.